The porch was always a little too warm in August, even after the sun dropped behind the tree line. We'd gathered there out of habit, drawn by the promise of a breeze and the creak of the old swing. The wood planks were rough beneath our legs, and the mosquitoes seemed to know just where to bite, circling our ankles like they'd been waiting all day for a fresh meal. Someone had brought a pack of sodas that was already sweating through the cardboard, and the air smelled faintly of cut grass. Tyler sat with his boots propped on the railing, eyes half-lidded with boredom. "If I stare at that mailbox any longer, I think I'll go cross-eyed," he muttered, flicking a mosquito from his shin. Jamie was curled up on the steps, tracing patterns in the dust with the toe of her sneaker. "We could walk to the old playground, but the swings make that weird screech now," she said, voice soft, almost hopeful. Dylan sprawled in one of the battered rocking chairs, drumming his fingers on the armrest, restless as always. "Or we could do literally anything else. I'm starting to feel like we're ghosts haunting this porch," he grumbled, eyeing the blue glow of the buzzing bug zapper. The neighborhood was quiet. No cars, no dogs barking, just the low hum of cicadas rising and falling like a tide. The world felt paused, like even the air had decided it was too hot to move. "It's like the whole town fell asleep," I said, popping open a soda and watching the fizz bubble up through the plastic. "Remember when there used to be fireworks on Saturdays? Or when the high school band would practice out on the football field way past dark before they moved to school across town?" Jamie sighed. "We've already talked about everything. Who's crushing on who? The gas station fight. How bored we all are." She looked up, the porch light catching the edges of her hair. "There's nowhere left to go." Dylan stopped drumming, a sly smirk breaking onto his face. "There's always the old road," he said, drawing out the words just enough to make us all look at him. "You know, the one with the bridge." The air seemed to shift. Just the mention of it made things feel colder, the bugs quieter. Tyler snorted. "You mean the bridge where people say the shadows move on their own?" Jamie's voice dropped. "Where the water never reflects the moon, even when the sky's clear." Dylan leaned forward, eyes glinting in the half-light. "Come on. What's the worst that could happen? Unless you're scared." I tried to laugh, but the sound showed just how frayed my nerves really were. I thought about the way the trees pressed in on that stretch of asphalt, swallowing sound and headlights, making you feel like you were the only people left in the world. That was a different kind of quiet, one that stuck to your skin. Most nights the idea would get shot down, but not tonight. Tonight, boredom felt heavier than fear. As we headed off the porch, sneakers thudding on the steps, laughter drifted from next door. The Senior Citizen Brigade, as the whole neighborhood called them, were posted up like sentinels in their usual spot. 4 battered rocking chairs and a crate table with a mysterious bottle wrapped in a brown paper bag perched in the middle. There was Mr. George, bald, barrel-chested and always quick with a story. Next to him lounged Slim, whose real name nobody remembered, legs crossed, and a faded Braves cap pulled low. Ray, checkerboard king and war vet, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. And finally Pops, who claimed to have seen every weird thing this town had to offer. Mr. George called out, "Evening, kids." "Where y'all off to in such a hurry?" "Tyler, you finally gonna teach these folks how to drive?" Tyler shot a grin across the yard. Just headed out to the old bridge. See if it's as creepy as everyone says." That got their attention. Pops looked up over his glasses. "You've heard the story about J.J., right? Fella went out on that bridge 50 years ago, never came home again. Some say he still calls out for help when the river runs low." Jamie nodded. "We've heard it." Ray shook his head, whistling under his breath. "You gotta be brave, or just plain stupid, heading out there after dark." Slim scratched his chin and grinned. "Guess we'll find out which." I caught Tyler's eye, and for a second I almost wished we were just staying put, listening to the old stories spin out into the night. But Dylan just waved them off, and we kept walking toward the car, their laughter and warnings lingering behind us like the echo of a song you can't quite get out of your head. We piled into Tyler's car, the usual arrangement. Jamie behind me, Dylan sprawled in the back, Tyler gripping the wheel. The seats clung to the backs of our legs, sticky from the leftover heat, and the smell inside was a mix of sun-baked vinyl and a forgotten fast food bag crumpled under the passenger seat. Jamie wrinkled her nose. "Tyler, you ever clean this thing?" "Adds character," Tyler said, jamming the key in the ignition. The engine coughed to life, headlights spilling weak cones onto the driveway. Dylan stretched, his sneakers thudding against the door. "Shotgun next time," he grunted, wedging himself deeper into the corner. The radio blared into the silence, static and half-tuned country. Jamie twisted the knob until something softer came through, the melody thin and warbling. I watched the porch light shrink in the rear view, a single yellow eye swallowed by the dark as we left the yard behind. For a while, everything looked the same. Quiet streets, porch lights glowing through curtains, the odd shape of a bike left out overnight. Tyler hummed under his breath, knuckles white around the wheel. The further we drove, the stranger things became. Streetlights flickered and vanished, houses turned into silhouettes, and the road narrowed, its edges nibbled away by overgrown grass. Branches scraped the roof whenever we hit a low spot, slow and deliberate, like something testing the metal. The steady drone of cicadas faded, replaced by the low, restless croak of frogs somewhere deep in the brush. Jamie pressed her forehead to the window, breath fogging the glass. "It's darker out here than I remember," she murmured. Dylan tapped a rhythm on the door, quick, impatient. "Anyone else feel like we're driving straight into nowhere?" His voice was half a joke, half a challenge. Tyler glanced at him in the mirror. "That's kind of the point, isn't it?" We fell quiet. The anticipation pressed in, thickening the air, making every sound sharper. The old road came up without warning, a sudden turn that made the headlights stutter. As we bumped onto it, the temperature in the car sank, the windows frosting with our breath. The trees knitted together overhead, sealing us in, the headlights barely reaching past the first row of trunks. Nobody said a word. The bridge appeared up ahead, worn concrete, rusted rails, nothing but blackness underneath. Tyler slowed to a crawl. For a moment, it felt like the world behind us had disappeared. There was only the bridge, the car's soft ticking, and the sound of my own heart, fast and bright, waiting for something to break the silence. The bridge came into view slow and uncertain, like it was deciding whether or not to let us cross. The concrete was cracked and flaking, every inch of guardrail painted orange with old rust. Tyler slowed the car, headlights smearing pale streaks across the battered surface. Overhead, Branches locked together, blotting out half the sky, and the river below whispered somewhere out of reach. Nobody said a word at first. Even Dylan, whose mouth usually ran faster than the engine, was quiet. I could hear Jamie's sneakers squeaking against the mat. Her voice finally cut through, thin and careful. "Are we stopping?" she asked, staring straight ahead. "We have to cross it, right?" Tyler said, though he didn't sound convinced. His hands were tighter on the wheel. The air inside the car seemed thinner, like we'd climbed a mountain without noticing. Dylan exhaled, long and slow. "You guys ever notice how the bridge looks different every time?" His gaze slid along the guardrail, eyes catching on the graffiti that wound around the metal like faded veins. The engine shuddered once, then again, and everything went black. Headlights blinked out. The radio fizzled to static. The dashboard died, swallowing us in silence so thick it pressed against my ears. "Tyler, what did you do?" Jamie whispered. "I didn't do anything," Tyler snapped, twisting the key hard enough I thought it might break. Nothing. Just a brittle click and the sound of water moving somewhere below. Dylan started to laugh, a jittery, breathless sound. "Perfect. Just perfect." He leaned forward, snatched the keys from Tyler's hand, and in one fluid, reckless motion, slid down the window. "Let's see how bad it really gets," he said. And before anyone could stop him, he flung the keys out into the dark. They hit metal with a sharp clang, then bounced once and vanished into the brush. For a second, no one breathed. My hands curled into fists. I wanted to shout, but the words wouldn't come. Jamie's eyes were wide, shining in the blue glow of the moon. "Why would you do that, Dylan?" she asked, voice trembling. He just shrugged, but there was something off in his smile. "It's just a bridge, right?" I pushed the door open, air rushing in cold and sour, tinged with wet earth and something faintly metallic. Jamie followed, her shoes crunching on gravel. The grass at the edge was slick, flattened into patterns like something had been twisting through it, and every step down the embankment pulled us further from the safety of the road. We started searching, fingers raking through damp weeds and scraps of trash, the ground squishing beneath our shoes. Jamie's flashlight kept sputtering, stuttering shadows across the tangled roots and the bridge overhead. A crumpled soda can, a shredded piece of tire. No keys. Jamie muttered, her voice tight. "He just can't help himself, can he? Always has to push it too far." I glanced at her, catching the edge of her frown in the flickering light. "He's been worse lately. That thing he said about your sister last week." I shook my head. It wasn't funny. Jamie's grip on the flashlight tightened. He knew it upset me. He just kept going, even after I told him to knock it off. Sometimes I think he likes getting a reaction. He acts like it's all a joke, but something pale flashed in the grass, and I lost my train of thought, kneeling to brush away a layer of wet leaves. Just another bottle cap. Jamie sighed, her shoulders sagging. "I told her not to come around when Dylan's here. She doesn't need that." We kept searching, the world above shrinking to a thin strip of rail and the soft flicker of headlights. For a while, there was nothing but our own breathing and the hush of water moving over stone. Then my fingers closed around something cold and familiar, the keys. I held them up, relief turning my knees to water. Jamie managed a weak smile. "Let's go," she whispered. We turned to climb up, but something strange prickled at the edges of my hearing. A high-pitched ringing, so faint at first I thought maybe it was just the blood rushing in my ears. It sharpened, rising in the air, so high and thin you couldn't be sure it was real. I winced, pressing my palms to my temples, and Jamie flinched, stopping halfway up the slope. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, her voice stretched thin. "Like ringing?" I hesitated. "I think so. Or maybe I'm just imagining it." The sound built, vibrating in the air, making my teeth ache. For a moment, I saw Tyler's silhouette by the hood, Dylan's arm propped on the rail. Then the ringing peaked, so sharp it felt like the world itself was shivering. Their shapes seemed to blur, then flicker, and I blinked hard, trying to clear my vision. "Guys," Jamie called, her voice cracking as the sound pressed in, so sharp it nearly drowned her out. And then it stopped, just like that. The silence rushed back in, too sudden, too complete. The bridge was empty. The car was gone. Tyler, Dylan, gone. Just the hush of the river, the echo of our own breath, and the keys shaking in my hand. We stood frozen at the base of the embankment, the keys digging into my palm, the world above us scrubbed blank by that impossible, lingering silence. For a moment, neither of us breathed. I half waited for Dylan to leap out from behind the rails and yell, "Gotcha!" But the bridge stayed empty, so still it made the hair on my neck stand up. Jamie's voice shook as she whispered, "Tell me you heard it. The ringing. Tell me I'm not losing it." I forced a nod, but the words stayed lodged in my throat. The air around the bridge still held a kind of tension, as if the sound had etched itself into the concrete and rails. The car was gone. Not even a scuff on the gravel, no footprints, nothing but the hush of the river and the faint, restless rustle in the trees overhead. Jamie gripped my arm. Where could they even go? The car can't just vanish, right? People can't just vanish. I tried to keep my voice steady. Maybe they walked off. Maybe they're screwing with us. She shook her head, her face pale in the moonlight. Number Tyler wouldn't just disappear. He'd be yelling for us by now, or honking the horn. We clambered up the slope, legs heavy, mud sucking at our shoes. On the bridge, the air was sharp and cold, and the concrete felt slick beneath my sneakers. I cupped my hands and called, "Tyler! Dylan!" My voice bounced off the water, echoing back in a way that sounded almost like someone else calling from far away. Jamie's flashlight jittered, casting shaky spirals through the shadows. She stopped in the middle of the bridge, spinning in place, her breath coming quick. "This isn't funny," she yelled. "Come out, please." The silence that answered was thick and endless. The woods loomed on either side, the river whispering somewhere beneath. I pressed my palm to the guardrail, half expecting to find it warm. But it was icy, damp, as if the ringing had left a trace. We waited as long as we could, shouting until our voices cracked, searching the banks and the trees for any glimmer of headlights, any shape moving in the dark. But the night swallowed every answer. In the end, we were alone on that bridge, surrounded by the hush of the woods and the slow churn of the river. After a while, we started walking. What else could we do? Each step away from the bridge felt unreal, like wading through a dream that didn't want to let go. The keys were heavy in my pocket, rattling with each step. The stories about this place had always seemed like games, dares, the kind of thing you laugh about on a hot porch. But now they hung over us, too real to shake off. When town finally appeared, the sky was starting to pale at the edges. I kept glancing back, half expecting to see the glint of headlights weaving through the trees, or hear Dylan's laugh chasing us from the shadows. But there was only silence and the uneasy weight of what we'd left behind. The others were gone. Gone. And I still don't know how or why. As we shuffled down Main Street, shoes heavy with mud, the bell over the coffee shop door jingled. The senior citizen brigade stepped out in a knot, George leading, Slim in his Braves cap, Ray and Pops trailing close behind, each holding paper cups steaming in the early morning air. Their voices drifted across the quiet street as they took in the sight of us. Just 2 instead of 4, clothes streaked with dirt, faces haggard. Out all night by the looks of it, Slim murmured, eyeing us over his coffee. Ray shook his head, voice low. That old bridge never is like letting folks go easy. Pops studied us, his brow furrowing. Did you hear anything strange last night? Sometimes it's not what you see out there. Mr. George took a slow sip, his gaze following us as we passed. Some kids never learn. Some stories just keep getting longer. Sometimes, late at night, I catch myself replaying everything, the ringing, the silence, the empty bridge, Mr. George's words, and I wonder why we couldn't have listened that night on the porch. I used to think Mr. George and his friends were just a bunch of old geezers with too many stories and not enough to do. But maybe there was something deeper in their warnings, something they'd learned the hard way. Maybe if we'd paid attention, Tyler and Dylan would still be here, their laughter echoing down Main Street instead of fading into the woods. Now, every time the wind rattles the windows, or that thin, high ringing creeps into my ears, I hear the old stories in a different way. I wish I'd listened just once before it was too late.